Hello, welcome to Shooting the Shit. It is the 6th of December and we are in the midst of the 16 days of activism. So today we are going to talk about 16 days of activism. What is it? Gender-based violence, and how does that relate to the workplace? So what do we need to do as employees if we have staff or colleagues who are dealing with that kind of thing at home? And also what can the workplace do to help support these causes generally? So you may notice there's only two of us today if you're watching us. So, but Meriesha is due to join us, so we might let her in when she arrives. But Hannah, what's your name and where do you come from?
Hello, I'm Hannah. I'm one of the co-founders of Shooting the Shit. I am a director of a marketing agency and I do lots of other things. And that's me. Meriesha's here.
She's here. Here she is.
She's in the house. Sorry, guys.
That's all right.
Bear with. Can you hear me all right on this?
Yeah. So I thought there was an echo then, but then I realised that you were just repeating everything that you said.
No, there was an echo, but I think it stopped, so I think we're fine. Yes,
it has.
I'm not just saying everything twice like some sort of version of my own shadow. Meriesha, what's your name? Where'd you come from?
Hi, I'm Meriesha. Where do I come from? Well, lots of different places in life. No, not really. It's not really that exciting. I come from the Midlands. I have the Midlands. I know.
The Midlands.
In my defence, I'm recovering from a cold, so I sound even more manly than I usually do. And yeah, so I do telecoms, I do marmalade, and I do podcasts like this.
You do. And I am also recovering. All of us are recovering from a cold at the moment. And so I would just like to point out that I have got terrible lighting. I am pale, but the lighting is accentuating this. And I don't normally have this green hue to my face. So I need to sort out some lighting.
Your internet is so slow, you can barely make out that you've got a human face anyway. So don't worry about it. You're so pixelated.
Standard.
Oh, I wonder if I might try and switch over then to the other one. But we're having, as you may be surprised to hear, Wi-Fi issues in Bake-Up at the moment.
Yeah, it's too late for that shit.
Right. Okay. Well, fine. As long as you can hear me, that's all that matters. Right. Let's crack on then. So first of all, 16 days of activism. Does anybody know what the 16 days of activism is, or would you like me to tell you?
Tell us, Rara.
Okay, so the 16 days of activism is actually, it was started by Unite, which is something that Kofi Annan, who used to be the UN director, started. But the UN has picked it up, and now lots of organisations around the world have picked it up. And it starts on the 25th of November, which is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. And it finishes on the 10th of December, which is Human Rights Day. And throughout those 2 points, there are 16 days of activism, surprisingly enough. And the theme usually is Orange the World. So basically, everybody is supposed to dress in orange, make buildings be lit up in orange, eat things that are orange. It's right up your street, Meriesha. It's all about the moms. And basically campaign and, do a lot of things on social media, but also do offline campaigning and try and eliminate gender-based violence. I know about it because it's something that the Seroptimists do, but I'm sure if you have been on social media, you will have seen people oranging the world and fighting the 16 days. Have either of you two seen any of it?
Yes.
Oh, good. Oh, there we go. That's marvellous, isn't it?
I have not.
You're not on socials, though, are you? Very much.
I do lurk in the background, but it's maybe just I don't move in the same kind of circles. So actually, I don't think it's as widely known about as you would maybe think.
No, it absolutely isn't. And this is the thing, it's been going for quite a number of years now. And every year, people, as I say, get the town hall lit up in orange and all sorts of, visible things in very, very visible places. And yet very few people actually know about it. If you're not kind of in those organizations that actively support this kind of stuff, which is mainly the UN, women's organizations, that kind of thing, big charities market, so like Christian Aid and all the rest of it. But yeah, if you're not moving in those circles, a lot of people haven't heard about it, which begs the question: how are we going to change the world if we can't even get the message out there in the first place that we're doing the 16 days? So first thing,
wait, Meriesha, did you have
I
your
have a
hand
question
up?
on it. Yeah,
it
kind of feeds into that, because do you think that it's a UK based kind of lack of, sharing of this kind of stuff? Is it more prevalent around the world than it is in the UK? And is that because there is an assumption that there is less workplace violence in the UK than there is, in other places around the world? Discuss.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah, no,
it's
a very good point. And as I say, it was a Kofi Annan's initiative. So it's very much better known in Africa and in India generally, because there is just a lot more gender-based violence that takes place statistically in those countries than there is in the UK, although we've still got a shitting lot of it. And yeah, I think that it's picked up by more organisations there. Like I say, in the UK, it just tends to be the big charities, and it tends to be women's charities that pick it up and run with it. Whereas in Africa and India, it's very much everybody does it. And one thing that I think we should talk about is the fact that it is gender-based violence. And in the UK, with the gender-based violence, because violence, domestic abuse does not just happen, rape does not just happen to women, as we have said many times on this podcast. And yet in the UK, it is only women's organisations that pick it up and run with it. Whereas in Africa and in India and things, they very much are more around that gender-based, aspect of it.
I wonder why in this country we all focus on women and not kind of gender, not just domestic, the setting or the power struggle. I wonder why it's seen as such a female problem, like a women's problem.
This is back to that conversation we were having when we did our International Men's Day special, isn't it? That I think there just are a lot more women's charities. There are a lot more, women's refuges. All of those things are set up to support women. And then, hello, Yub. And there just isn't as much of it. There aren't as many charities that support men who are experiencing domestic violence or have experienced rape. And it's only in recent years that started entering the consciousness and the national dialogue, isn't it?
And I'm not being facetious when I say this, but I do wonder if things like Punch and Judy had a hand in that, because it was very much like a portrayal of violence against women by the men, the wife beater. Like there is a bit of a kind of like subculture in Britain of wife beating. Like, you've got your string vest on, like the vest is called the wife beater. Stella Artois is known as wife beater. Like, there is a kind of, it was almost accepted that you had a few pints and then you knocked your missus about. And maybe it's kind of toxic masculinity is really prevalent here, and we've got this culture of gender-based of violence against women in the home.
Well, it absolutely is, isn't it? And I mean, there's when we've been doing our recent campaign against sort of spiking, I mean, just if in like the Manchester gay clubs, there's been a massive increase in spiking, and men are drugging and then raping other men. But there's a lot of shame for women to come forward and say I've been raped, isn't there? And it's a horrendous. But far fewer men will come forward and say, actually, I've been raped and I was put in this situation. So, even when we talk about statistics, statistically we have less of it in the UK. We don't actually know that, because actually most of the violence that happens against men is not being reported for a multitude of reasons. So yeah. Although there was a friend of mine from India posted an article that the Indian Times had run, not an article, sorry. So the Indian Times, a respected publication, was running a Facebook poll to find out whether or not it was ever acceptable for a man to beat his wife. And it was like, 50-50-ish with the results that were coming through. So, we have this sort of Western view of, we're sort of over that now, and we've got equality, and men don't beat their husbands, men don't beat their wives, and all the rest of it. And we forget that in other countries, it's really prevalent still, isn't it?
Yeah. And in this country.
Well,
Just
yeah,
generally.
exactly.
Just generally.
So, one of the other things that 16 Days of Activism this year is particularly trying to tackle is the massive rise in domestic abuse that the global pandemic has seen. So, thanks to all of the multiple lockdowns that we've all been put under, you know, those who are not safe at home have suddenly been locked in environments where they are not safe, and so rates of domestic abuse have gone through the roof, and we know this from local women's refuges are absolutely bursting at the seams, but also that extent that's not just women, again, that this is children that are being beaten, and this is men that are being beaten. So the impact of the global pandemic is far further reaching than we thought. And I think it's one of those things, we talked about this, didn't we, during the first lockdown? We talked about the risk of people who are at home and aren't safe, and things were put in place, and then the conversation moved on, and we've never come back to it. And I think it's really important that we keep that conversation going, because we're not currently in a lockdown, but we might be in another, and lockdowns are happening all over the world at various points, aren't they?
Yeah, I think as well, like, it was a World Cup year, and that statistically shows that it increases the risk of gender-based violence or domestic violence, which is, not good.
I think, the whole, lockdown situations, across the world, I think we've barely even scratched the surface with how it's affected people. Like, not just from a violence perspective, but just, mentally, health. There's just so much that's tied into this, and I just don't think we're anywhere near out of it either, quite frankly, because we're just living in this world of constant, like the news, there's always something in the news about, there's always a new variant, there's always this, there's always that, and that just seems to be how it is now. And I just think the violence side of things, well, almost by default, it's hidden, and so yes, there's probably lots more of it going on, but it's still being hidden. We're nowhere near knowing how much going on.
It's true. And I think as well, the long-term impact as well. So yes, during lockdown, people locked in environments that weren't safe, but now you've got spiraling costs. The cost of living is going up, which is increasing stress on relationships and families. Mental health is deteriorating because we've had this uncertainty and people have been locked in, and we were already in a mental health pandemic, like crisis. And, I don't know many people that have come out of lockdown unscathed mentally. And lots of people are suffering from PTSD and have got complex grief and have lost people and have got now long-term health complications from having COVID or additional care and responsibilities. So all these kind of long-term second-hand consequences of lockdown and the pandemic are going to increase pressure on family units, and thus increase the likelihood of domestic violence or gender-based
It's
violence.
pressure from all sides, isn't it? Absolutely. You've not just, you've got the chances of people being stressed and therefore becoming violent is massive, but then, you're trapping everybody together so they've got the opportunity. So we've got this perfect storm that's going to arise.
Yeah. So how, as employers, can we fix it?
Okay. Well, yes. How can we fix it? Well, there are several sort of aspects that we need to look at when we're thinking about, how do we deal with this in the workplace? And I think one of the first things that we need to think about, if we think about in the workplace, so that's whether or not you are an employer dealing with an employee, or whether you are a colleague dealing with another colleague who is, coming and disclosing something. The first thing that we need to recognize is that it might not always be obvious, or it might be obvious and somebody might not want to disclose it. And that's the first difficulty, is how do you create an environment where those conversations are even possible? Because I'm going to give you 4 steps of what we can do once we've disclosed it. But the first, piece of the puzzle is, how do we make our workplaces spaces where people feel that they can talk about it? Because I think one of the big things that people have is the fear that if they tell somebody, that is very quickly going to escalate, and then somebody will tell the police, and then somebody will tell social services, and they're going to lose the kids, and blah, blah, blah. So how do we create environments where people feel safe to talk about it?
There's also, well, I mean, it's not even creating environments where people, I mean, it is obviously creating environments where people feel safe to talk about it. And that comes down to culture and just not being a dick with your staff, being kind, being caring. But also it's maybe training managers to spot the signs and spot warning signs, like a partner's creeping around the workplace, or people are like, it's clear that someone's having control exerted over them because their working pattern needs to change because the partner says so, or their level of work or productivity is deteriorated, or they're coming into work with signs of, physical abuse. Like, I think it's training staff to spot these signs and not just ignoring it, but knowing how to approach it so that you're not either putting your colleague in more danger, putting them in an awkward situation, or making assumptions.
Yeah. I think that's really important. Training is absolutely vital, isn't it? And it's got to be the first step. And training has to be for everybody, not just for, managers or bosses. You've got to put that in place, because I think what's really important that you said there, Hannah, is it's not always visible. It's not always somebody coming in with a black eye, or they've got a cut on their head, or they've got broken their arm for the 4th time this year. It could be coercive control. It could be that their boyfriend or their wife is always waiting in the car for them at 5 minutes to finishing time, and they're not allowed to stay, and they've got to rush out the door to be out on time, or somebody's constantly texting them. This is another thing. If somebody's constantly checking their phone, very often that would be a go to a disciplinary, and a manager might be like, right, you can't be on your phone all the time, I'm going to take it off you. Well, actually, if you've got somebody at home then who is going to go ballistic at you because you haven't answered their text message all day, you're then doubly punished, aren't you? So it's learning how to recognize all of those subtle signs, and perhaps not going straight to punishment.
Yeah, or they might spend a lot longer at work, or not want to go home, or
not want to go
make
home.
jokes of it. Yeah. So I think that's really important.
I did see another thing as well that a workplace had done, which somebody was sharing on social media. And what they had done was they had set up in lunch just a sort of drop-in centre, and it wasn't an obvious thing. They had a trained counsellor, but again, it doesn't necessarily have to be that, depending on how your workplace works. But it was just, I will be at this place for 15 minutes, and if you want to tell me something, anything, you can come and tell me something. And if you don't want to come and tell me in person, you can leave me a note, or you can drop me an email, and it can even be anonymous. And I thought that was a really interesting way of doing it. Literally offering a space for that conversation to happen should somebody need to do it. I thought, I don't know, it's not always practical in every workplace, is it? But it's a nice idea.
It is, yeah, and I think just having like vehicles for that open dialogue, however you do it, is really important, and allowing somebody to disclose. But also, you can support a colleague without necessarily having a disclosure, and you certainly don't need proof in order to support a colleague. You shouldn't be asking to kind of see their bruises or speak to their partner or whatever. If you suspect that somebody is a victim of gender-based violence, you treat them as if they are. You don't need to see proof. So if they are not feeling safe on the way to work, you can change their working location, or ask them what it is that they need that will help them. You might want to start staggering their work time, their start and end time. So don't make assumptions, but you might get the gist without a full open disclosure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's assume then that disclosure has happened. So somebody at work has said that they are a victim of domestic abuse in some form or another. There are 4 steps. Now, just to say, there are loads of resources available about this, and I will put the links to the websites in the show notes and in the comments. There are free toolkits that you can download from various places. So if you haven't got a budget for training staff, you can at least get some access to some free resources and share them amongst your staff, so they've got that knowledge. But there's this thing called the 4 R's approach. So the first one is the first R is recognize, and we've kind of talked about that already. It's allowing that that disclosure to happen. If it isn't a verbal disclosure, recognizing that there still might be that issue, even though you don't have to actually say it. But I think also it's just come down to believing somebody, isn't it? If somebody's told you that, they're probably not lying, are they?
Yeah, definitely. And some signs could be like frequent absences or lateness, or like the obvious physical signs, decreased productivity where someone's previously been, a good worker, or tearfulness and unexplained injuries and things like that. So, yeah.
Just as a side note, because I think we do need to recognise this. Have any of you worked in a workplace where you feel you could disclose something like this should you have needed to?
I don't know. I think I can't comment because luckily I haven't had the issue, and I think, the main thing for me coming out of this conversation now is actually that if and there's some massive assumptions going to be made here, but you know how I am. I like to, just put those blankets out. That's how I
what
roll.
you're here for, Reach.
Yeah, but I think, there's going to be an assumption that if you work for a bigger company, that you have the means, you have the people, you have the backup to be able to manage something like this. And when I say manage, I use that term very loose there, because there's lots of things that come with managing this conversation. But for me, it seems like actually what needs to happen in the UK is for there to be a small business pack. That means you have to have these things in place, or you have to at least have an awareness of them, because I'm sure there's going to be like 99% of people wouldn't even consider this kind of stuff, especially in a small business, because you just don't, because all it is like, I'm making this widget. That's what I've got to do. I've got to sell it next. I've got to do this. I've got to do accounts. I've got to, and so on and so on. And then people find themselves in positions of management, or in, being able to, bring in staff, and have absolutely no knowledge of any of this. And therefore wouldn't know how to talk about it or how to deal with it, and wouldn't even know where to go to. So to me, it seems like there has to be some kind of like basic stuff in place to say, okay, if you're starting up a business, this is what you need to know about.
Yeah.
I think as well, there's a massive, all of those prejudices that we have, all of those unintentional internalized prejudices, because again, if we see a woman, if we're working in an office with a woman and she's always coming in with bruises, or she's really quiet, or her boyfriend's always checking up on her, we are going to go, I think she's been abused. But actually, if we were working in an office with a man who constantly came in with bruises, we're probably going to think like, oh, they play football at the weekends, or they do dirt biking or something, aren't we? And our minds would never go to actually there might be something a little bit more damaging happening here. And so you're right, Reece, that training is really important. And that's why I say for every member of staff to say, actually look out for these things and don't make assumptions about what it is, because it could be something completely different that you've never thought about.
But I think as well, like the same is true with friends. Like how many of us have, failed to spot the signs, not necessarily even of abuse, but of many things, with your friends, depression or anxiety or whatever, with your friendship circles, because everyone is so focused on their own shit. And, maybe if we all just took a little bit of time to recognize the warning signs for a variety of issues with our friends or just with people, then the workplaces would be safer as well. And that if everybody was watching out for each other, then nobody would have to do special training on it. Do you know what I mean?
But the problem there as well is, the thing with that is we are British, though, aren't we? No sex for British, please. And the thing is, I've had friends who I suspect are not in very healthy relationships, and I see things that I've been in a not very healthy relationship. I was in one that I wasn't physically abused, but there was a lot of coercive control, and he destroyed me by the time I came out of it. So I can see warning signs in people, and I've seen it in friends, and I wouldn't have the confidence to go to them and say, I think you're in an abusive relationship. For one thing, that's not my position. I'd probably say it to Hannah because she's my sister, or my very, very best friend. But anybody else, I would feel really uncomfortable starting that conversation because it's not my place to say it. So again,
but
you
can
know,
you
there's that
imagine
barrier,
though, like,
isn't there?
that's your friend. Can you imagine then as an employer going to
Yeah,
you know, someone and saying, I think you might be in an abusive relationship, which is why it's
exactly.
important that rather than kind of demanding a disclosure and demanding some evidence, that you kind of recognize the signs and say, like, can I help you with anything? Is there anything that, you know, that you want to talk to me about? Is there anything I can do as your employer that will make your life easier? Because I've noticed that you're sad or, you know, tearful or late or staying late at the office or, coming in with a few injuries. Is there anything that you need from me? And I think it's just opening that dialogue.
Yeah,
I
and
think
you are. Oh, go on, Reesh.
I was just going to say, I think that actually starts from, you know, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? And I think, you know, that starts from day one, even before anything else has happened. You know, God forbid it happens and you have to deal with it in the workplace. Yeah. But if you build an environment where, you know, conversations can happen, then it's less of an event, you know, if you go and talk to somebody, you know, as a separate thing. So like I'm using my own, you know, employment, you know, as example. If someone was, you know, to have a meeting, you know, that in itself starts to raise questions because we never had meetings. Like, you know, it's like, oh, we go into the meeting room, what's going on? Who's getting sacked? You know, who hiring? There's only like, you know, 5 people in the bastard business, so I don't know what's going on. But you know, it starts, you know, asking questions straight away. So therefore, that means, you know, may make someone feel, well, I'm not going to because it's, you know, create more questions. So I think it's like there's so much to think about as an employer, you know, because you've got to enforce all of these things, but it's got to be from day one, right?
I think you're right, and as like we always try and do this to our staff. You know, give them that kind of pep talk at the beginning, saying, you know, you can talk to us. Your job is second, your life is first, and we need to fit in around you in your life. So whatever it is you need from us, you know, we'll do, and you can have the flexibility that you need so that your life is happy and your job is bearable, because that's the order it should go in. But it's very difficult. Like, you have to persistently demonstrate that. You can say it till you're blue in the face, but a new person who doesn't know you, especially if they're kind of starting out in the career and they're young, like, you know, you don't believe them and you don't feel comfortable. So we have to model that behavior, for one thing. And as managers, we have to prioritize our own lives and let them see that, you know, I'm taking the dog for a walk because I've had enough today, or like I'm finishing early because I've got to do the horses before it's dark or whatever. Like, we take good care to model that behavior and talk about it. Like, if me and Rachel, I remember when me and Rachel first started out and it was just the two of us, we would ring each other on a weekly basis, and one of us would cry, and we'd tend to take it in turns. And we'd take it in turns, and the other one would pep talk. And then we took somebody else on. We brought Alicia in, and we never told her this. And she was melting down on her own, feeling like she couldn't talk to either of us because we never actually said, we cry every week. Like, we have a freak out every single week. We just, you know, do it on the phone. And
didn't tell you.
Really, just didn't tell her. So, like, as an employee, you're right. Think about it from the beginning. But model that openness, that trustworthiness, that kind of two-way communication and supportiveness, and talk about your stance on domestic violence and abuse, and kind of make it known that it's a welcoming, open environment that people can relax in and trust you.
But also, that point, Reesh, that you made about it not being unusual is right. So we have, in our business, we have a fortnightly meeting, a staff meeting. And at that meeting, we go around and we say, are you okay? Are you managing your workload? How do you feel? You know, it's in front of everybody, but that we do that every single week. And we are all honest. Like, as Hannah says, we're honest about our workloads. If we're struggling, we'll say, I'm fucking fed up this week. It's horrendous. But also, it's normal. And then we offer the space afterwards. We say, if you want to have this conversation privately, we will, there's time afterwards to have it privately, or tell me when you want to have it. But it has to be normal, because otherwise, like I said at the beginning, if you have a drop-in session, for example, in the canteen, it has to be once a month. Otherwise, that person that then goes to it, or when you say, well, we're having a domestic violence pop-in today, and all of a sudden one person goes, everybody else in the office is going to know what's going on. So you're like, it's just got to be a regular opportunity for people to come and disclose anything they want to disclose. And if they disclose something, you believe them. And if they don't disclose something,
and you deal with it appropriately, whether they're telling you that their skin, or that they've got a disability, or that they're really sad, or that they're being abused. Whatever someone sits down and tells you, deal with it appropriately and sensitively. Because if someone's sitting there thinking, one day I'm going to get up the courage to disclose that I need some help because I'm a victim of domestic abuse, and then they know that you've dealt with something really shit, and like you've been really bad at it, then they're not going to come and talk to you. So, as a company, as a manager, don't be a dick, I think, is the thing that we're trying to get across here.
I think as well, though, but as a manager, it's for all parties, isn't it? And okay, we have responsibility managers in jobs, but we have people.
So the first, I will just quickly return us.
Hey up.
Have we got a lag?
I love it when this happens. We're so professional.
Give her a minute to catch up.
Come on,
Rachel.
Is she there?
I think we've got a massive lag.
I think we have got a massive
There's
lag.
a massive lag, isn't there? You guys can't hear what I'm saying now, can you? It's going to come in about 5 minutes.
Well, we can hear what you're saying, but we don't know if it's live or not. So,
hashtag live.
We don't know when you said it.
It's not catching up.
No. So, Rach, you stop talking. I don't know if you can hear me.
No,
she's
20 minutes behind.
It's like 5 minutes ago. Oh my god.
Okay, well, stop talking. So that's number one, is recognise.
Yes.
Number two is respond.
I'm responding to you. Wait, right.
Turn your video off, at least.
Yeah, turn your video off. So number two is respond. So as an employer, there are some ways that you can respond, and there are some things that you absolutely shouldn't do. Firstly, don't try and contact the abuser. That's not your place. Don't try and seek proof. And this is really important now. Don't adopt the role of a support worker. Like, you are not a social worker, and you're not a support worker. And you can signpost, you can help them at the office, but you're not going to rescue them. So, you could actually end up making it worse and putting that person at risk. Rachel, you're back.
I'm back. Can you hear me at the right time?
Well, I don't know, but we can hear you.
All right, good. That was awful. I was about a good minute behind then. That was horrendous.
Carry on. You were talking over us, so it felt pretty normal, actually.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No change.
Right, anyway, very quickly, back to the 4 R's. So we have actually covered most of now. So first R is recognise. Recognise that there's a problem. If somebody tells it you, acknowledge it. The second R is respond. We've already talked about that. You respond in an appropriate way. So put policies in place that will help them rather than punish them for the situation that they're in. And make sure, if you are putting those policies in place, that you are asking the person what will actually help you, and not just making a blanket managerial decision that this is what you need. Because that's not what someone needs. Third one of you was just talking about it then. The third R is refer. So refer them on to an appropriate service. But the key thing here is if they ask for it. So it's back to that point, isn't it, of, people think if they tell you that they're a victim of domestic abuse, that all of a sudden the police are going to be involved and the social services are going to be involved. They're going to lose their kids, and they're going to lose their home, and they're going to be discommunicated from their family. So I think it's really important that you refer, but rather than saying, right, now you have to go here, it's more here are some services that might help you.
I think as well, like, seeking help and telling somebody are two different things. By telling you that their life is shit. They're not asking you to save them. They're not asking you for help necessarily. They might just be sharing their load, or asking for, they might tell you what they need. So don't kind of get on your white horse and try and rescue people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unless
It's
they want
really
you to.
important. It's really important. And so, yeah, and the final R is record, which, I mean, if you've got a decent HR manager anyway, you should be recording these things that are happening. But keep a record of it in your HR policies and your HR manual. Sympathetically.
You can tell you don't do HR. In your HR policy.
In your HR policies, yeah. In your I meant records,
folders.
didn't I? I meant folders. That's the word I was looking for. Folders. Yeah. Folders. All those folders that we all have with paper in sitting on shelves. And because one of the main reasons also that you record things is if there ever is a court case, and if the person who's the victim does decide to take it further and it does end up in court, your records will be required, and you can then use those to support what that person is saying. So I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, just to say about policies as well, like not everything requires a policy. Sometimes from an HR perspective, just a good policy is one that's flexible and you can therefore give somebody a little bit more freedom or scope or flexibility. So if your working hours are written in stone that they're 9 to 5, and actually it works better for somebody if they can start a bit earlier and finish a bit earlier, then you need to be able to have that flexibility that you can allow one person that, or that you can change the working time for everybody because you've got it written into contracts that you can make amends to contracts and stuff. So it doesn't always have to be a policy. Sometimes it's just not having a policy, actually, like you don't have a policy on it, which allows you some flexibility, which is useful. So like ACAS is a really good place to go to get support and training on kind of writing flexible policies and creating policies that aren't too rigid, that allow scope, and also on working with people specifically who've got kind of home needs.
Samara's made a good comment as well to say that include people with lived experience in policies, procedures and toolkits and things like that. And I think that's really important because it's a bit like what you were saying before, Hannah, about, we are honest and we share our vulnerabilities and stresses, and when we're having a paddy and when it's all getting a bit overwhelming. And it's exactly the same thing with domestic abuse, isn't it? If you can have a personal story, sometimes as well for certain people, it takes hearing somebody else's story for you to realize that actually you are in perhaps a coercive relationship or whatever. And so by having, be honest and open with people about, these are the stories of the people that work here and these are the things that we've experienced, and that gives somebody that opportunity as well to open up, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Any final? So those are, as I said, I will post links to all of the resources that we've mentioned in the comments and in the show notes, so that you can find it. There is loads more information available out here. But I think the key takeaway from today is just training, talking and training.
Oh, Dally, fuck off.
People on the podcast won't know what's happening, but my husband is standing at the door like a Jack Nicholson serial killer, staring at us.
Like a bloody ghost.
Yeah. Any final thoughts? Anything we've missed, girls, about how, what workplaces need to consider, or what friends need to consider, or what human beings need to consider when we're talking about gender-based violence?
Meriesha?
I don't think we've missed anything. I just think it's very, I think Hannah kind of mentioned the point, and I think it's, if you are not a social worker, the majority of the time, and actually you maybe need to, take the advice of, somebody that is a HR professional or a social worker or a counsellor, don't try and be that if that's not your skill set, especially from an employer perspective. There's lots of resource out there, free and paid for, people that, do have this skill set and can help, especially when it comes to policies or no policies, etc., etc. I think, you have to have a professional, look at these things sometimes. And I think we're quite lucky, shall I say, privileged that, you know, in small businesses we can be flexible, we can, you know, make decisions very quickly based on, you know, changes that need to be made. In, you know, giant organizations it's not so simple, and they do have to have, you know, things in place, you know, and structure and things like that. So, you know, I think it's just being sympathetic to your environment, and taking the steps that you need to be able to support other people.
Yeah, and I
Definitely.
think from a business management point of view, it's really important to make the point that this doesn't need to cost the earth. You know, there are a lot of free resources out there that can help if you don't have a budget for this. And like I say, sometimes it's just a case of doing an hour's training with some free resources with your staff to have that conversation. But it, you know, there is also paid training. There is also, you know, one-to-one occupational health or therapists or whatever that you can get, either refer your staff to or bring them into the workplace. So there are solutions to suit all budgets, and don't think that just because you're a small organization you can't afford this kind of thing, because we absolutely are only going to change things if we all start recognizing gender-based violence, basically. Hannah, final thought.
Put the safety of your employees above everything, not productivity. So don't kind of come at it, because don't be worried about, you know, how productive somebody is who's suffering or is a victim. Think about their safety always.
Yeah. Reesh, final thought.
I don't know, I've had mine. That's
You've
it.
had yours. You did it. I do. Yeah, I do this every time to you, don't I? I always let you come out with your nugget of wisdom, and then make you look like a dickhead because you don't have a final thought.
I haven't got any more left. That's it.
That's it. That was my one nugget. I've used it.
It was a bloody big nugget, though.
It was a good nugget. It was a great nugget. And I would just say, yeah, just don't make assumptions. Try and work on your inner assumptions about what domestic violence is, and because it isn't necessarily that. So don't just rely on your prejudices. That is it. We are back in 2 weeks, which will be Monday, the 20th of December, for our Christmas special. That will be the last one of the year, and then we'll be taking a little bit of a break and working on our content calendar and coming back. So if you have a subject that you think we should talk about that we haven't covered to do with feminism in the workplace, please let us know, because we would very much like to. That's
if you want to be a guest. Guests are always welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to be a guest, if you've got something to talk about that you think we'll be interested in, pitch it to us. Thank you very much. If you are watching the Facebook Live, thank you very much, and thank you for commenting. If you're watching it on catch up, you can continue to comment, and we will still see it, and we will still respond to you. If you are listening on the podcast, please leave us a review, and if you are watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe below, guys.
Subscribe below. I love that you say, like, if you're watching on catch up, like we're on the fucking ITV player or something.
I know we are. Yeah, we will tomorrow. We will be soon, won't we? That's it. Thank you very much.
iPlayer.
Yeah. Time to wave, girls. Bye.
Goodbye.